Hello, and welcome back to the Bandana Podcast. I am your host, Sarah. I was thinking earlier today that I should really come up with an outro to my episodes because I always end my episodes really awkwardly. I'm gonna hopefully think of one before the end of this episode, but that's just a random side note. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about something really cool, and if you can't tell by the title, I am going to be talking about food safety today. Particularly, I will be talking about HACCP, which is short for the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. This is actually here because of NASA, so just think about how cool it is that NASA contributed to public health in this way, and they developed this new standard of food safety and food regulation. So let's start with what HACCP is. So, also, let me just clear up right now HACCP is HACCP, but I'm pronouncing it HACCP. HACCP is basically kind of like the FDA, but for food specifically. So, you know how, oh, wait, I'm sorry, not the FDA, the EPA. So, you know how the EPA kind of has these standards for what businesses and companies can emit into the air with pollution and how much waste they can produce, things like that. HACCP is kind of the analogous counterpart to that, where they are looking at food safety concerns. So they are concerned with food getting from the farm all the way to getting to your plate safely. And in the public health sphere, we have a term for that kind of journey. We call it farm to fork. I'm sure you've probably heard that on an HEB commercial or something. That sounds like something that would be in some sort of grocery store commercial. I don't know. I feel like if I saw a Trader Joe's commercial, that would be what it is. But I also know that Trader Joe's is not notable for their produce. Um, I will say that Trader Joe's snacks, those are some top tier things. But anyways, so that's what HACCP is. HACCP is just making sure that the food you are consuming and the food that you are ordering at restaurants is being prepared safely. So they're looking at how are the farmers treating the animals and the crops, how are they slaughtering them, how are they transporting that food and meat to restaurants or other manufacturers, and it can be other things if this is an extra step. How are restaurants preparing the food and making sure that there's no cross contamination, especially when we're dealing with things that are pretty prone to foodborne illness, such as raw meat and raw eggs. So that's basically what HACCP is. And the cool part is, I did not know this until I studied foodborne illness this semester, but HACCP is actually in existence because of NASA. So I'm sure if you're from the US, you're familiar with NASA and what they do, but I do get a few international listeners, so I just want to give a brief description of NASA if you don't know what that is. So, NASA is the government agency in the US that deals with outer space exploration. NASA is an acronym for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So, a few decades ago, NASA was planning on sending people into space. And I actually don't know when HACCP came around, but basically, NASA was talking to public health and the food industries that or about how they're wanting to develop a system where they are able to sterilize food in whatever way possible, so that way when they're sending people up to the moon or up to the ISS, the International Space Station, they are not risking their people with food poisoning, because if you get food poisoning here on Earth, then hopefully you are within some sort of reach of a medical facility. But if you're in space, there's almost no helping you, man. If I would imagine if you get I know this is going to sound gross. I would imagine if you get diarrhea in space, I'm sorry, man. I don't know how I don't know how you would go about that. But yeah, I learned that HACCP came around because of NASA, and I thought that was really cool. Oh my gosh, also speaking of food safety, so last week is when I learned about food safety. Also, I say last week as if you know what I'm meaning. So I'm currently recording this on November 18th, and last week I was doing a unit for one of my classes about food safety, and just yesterday I found out that there is now a listeria outbreak among people that have consumed enoki mushrooms. I don't know if like big box grocery stores sell enoki mushrooms or if that's just a mushroom that you would find at an Asian market, but apparently enoki mushrooms are getting recalled because there has been a listeria outbreak. So I'm of course I'm not planning on releasing this episode until December, but if you're listening to this, just keep an eye out on enoki mushrooms. Okay, on a random note, I just thought of something I can maybe use as an outro in my podcast episodes. I was thinking about using one step back, two steps forward. And the reason I wanted to use that phrase is because when we're talking about public health, we are centering our scope around prevention of adverse health effects. So we really do rely on so many prevention efforts in order to keep people from getting um, some bad habits, bad lifestyles, and other adverse health effects later on. So we want to take the effort now so we don't have to put in more effort later in healing you. Of course, we still want to heal you, but we want to do what we can right now to prevent ourselves from getting to a further place of the need to heal. I'm not sure if that made sense, but I kind of want to use that as my outro. So until next time, one step back, two steps forward. I'll see you next week.